Capping the card hits Oaklawn. Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host for this episode of Capping the Card. My name is Matthew Desantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. And like I said, welcome to Capping the Card, where we are going to be covering all 10 races for Saturday's card at Oaklawn Park. Now, make sure before we get into this to like the video, subscribe to Trust the Profits. Make sure to leave your comments below about who you think the best bets are for Saturday at Oaklawn Park. Do you agree with where I'm going? Do you disagree? Let me know. Always like to hear your thoughts and engage with our listeners. But if you're not familiar with Capping the Card, what I do is I run through all 10 races on the card and provide you my top pick and my top value play for each of those races. So this should be a pretty fun exercise. Oaklawn, of course, opened last weekend, but it was in the muck and in the slop as so much of the country was covered in bad winter weather. And again, this weekend, it looks to be much the same throughout the rest of the country, but Oaklawn actually looks to be quite nice this weekend. So a lot of things that happened last weekend, you're just going to have to kind of toss out the window, I have a feeling, because you just can't extrapolate too much from what happened last week in terms of a muddy sealed track. And so looking at it this week, some rain obviously hitting the area earlier this week, but really the last couple of days has been nice, crystal clear. So should be clear running, fast track, should be a pretty dry surface by Saturday. So something to keep in mind, obviously, when handicapping. Always important to check the weather when you're capping, particularly these winter months. There's a lot of rain down in Florida right now. There's storms throughout the Midwest. But like I said, we're lucky in that it's going to be a nice weekend at Oaklawn Park. So without any further ado, let's just dive into the card and let's go through all 10 races. And we'll kick things off with the $20,000 maiden claimer going 6 furlongs for 3-year-olds and up, who are fillies and mares. And we're going to start off a little chalky, unfortunately, in this first race. I typically love, if you watch any of my programs, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I love attacking maiden claiming races for big prices. But looking over this field, it was really hard to find a price. And so I ended up on the favorite, Doozy Bats, who's a 4-5 in the morning line, recently came out of Wesley Ward's barn for Nevada Litfin, and has Nick Juarez up on the mount, who had a pretty nice opening weekend, winning 3 of his 13 mounts that opening weekend at Oaklawn Park. Listen, I don't love giving out chalk as my top pick in this particular race. The rail doesn't necessarily do any favors, but if she runs anywhere near what she's been running at Keeneland and at Kentucky, at Churchill Downs and at Belmont before that, she feels like she's going to blow away the field in this particular race. And if you're playing any sort of a pick sequence, I mean, she certainly feels like a single and move on to some extent. If you're not going to single her, then I think you really have to spread in this particular race, maybe make some of the sequences a little bit more challenging, but it's just hard to really get past her. I mean, her buyer speed figures, which I know is not the holy grail, but I mean, they are 10 points plus better than anybody else in the field. And that's her worst buyer speed figure on dirt, is 10 points better than anybody else's best buyer speed figure on dirt. So hard to really get past her. I mean, a horse like Keen Contender 4-1 just really doesn't do much for me. I mean, this is a horse that is dropping down in class to a maiden special weight, or maiden claimer, I should say. So maybe you see something there, but this horse, like I said, it's 6 furlongs. You know, maybe there's something that you want to go against the chalk, but I think tough to do that. Ultimately, where I went for a little bit of value was at the number 6 hole, Alita, at 9-2 on the morning line for Kim Pohl and Walter de la Cruz. This is a horse that just seems to finish underneath, has been kind of teetering back and forth between maiden special weights and maiden claimers. A little bit of an AB horse, you know, on, off, on, off. Last time out was not great at Mahoning Valley, although that's a track where I joke sometimes with my dad and others, you know, form goes to die at Mahoning Valley sometimes. I mean, you just get all sorts of crazy results at that track occasionally, particularly during these kind of late fall, early winter months where weather can play such a big factor. But I think this is a horse that in this spot at the maiden claiming level has demonstrated the ability to finish underneath at the very least. Maybe this horse catches a little bit of a flyer and is able to is able to get the win here. But I think a lead at 9-2 presents some decent value in this field. And this is a horse that should be forwardly placed, if nothing else. So should be in the early mix and not be contingent on speed and other factors. So that's kind of where I went in race one. But I have a feeling this is going to be a little bit of a chalkier effort first time out there. Now let's move to the second race, which is a $30,000 claimer, 6 furlongs, again on the dirt. All of these are on the dirt at Oaklawn this weekend. And this is for 3-year-olds and up. And I went to another horse, not the favorite in this spot, but my top pick is the number 2 horse, Dark Timber, at 4-1 on the morning line for Norm Cass, jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. And Ricardo, this is going to be his first weekend down at Oaklawn Park. He missed last weekend. When you look over the jockey colony at Oaklawn, Ricardo certainly seems to be, I think, kind of the top jockey to some extent. We'll see how that plays out in terms of numbers. He's going to get a lot of great rides. He's back on a lot of Asmussen horses this weekend. Of course, there was the famous rift between him and Asmussen last year after the ride he gave Silver State in the dirt mile at the Pennsylvania Derby Day. But listen, that being said, they seem to be back on good terms. He's catching a lot of really good mounts, has been jockeying Echo Zulu again. So Ricardo Santana Jr. back in the good graces of Asmussen, but here he is on a Cassie horse who I really like. This is a horse that is going to go for the lead, and he's got the right jockey. I mean, Ricardo's aggressive out of the gate, and that's when he's at his best, in my opinion. So this is a kind of a nice marriage between jockey and horse, in my opinion. Nobody else has the early speed that Dark Timber does. Should be relatively easy on the lead. The works at Oaklawn have looked very, very good. I also don't love the favorite in this particular spot, which is the Robertino Diodoro horse. And Diodoro, I should say, has been on an absolute tear early on at Oaklawn. We're winning 4 of the 10 entries and finishing in the money in 8 of those 10 entries opening weekend. So, it's kind of hard maybe to go against that horse, but I just don't think the Diodoro horse is one that I'm just not thrilled about in this particular spot. I think the combination of distance and some of the recent efforts just don't make me too enthralled with what this horse has to offer. So I'm looking past this. I also think the 9 Penetrator, the works for that horse, the Jerry Hollendorfer horse, it does not look like he's taking the Oaklawn turf particularly well, or track, I should say, particularly well. So as a result, where did I go for my value? Well, I went to Hanks, number 6 horse, at 12-1. This is a run happy. I always like run happies sprinting. And this is a horse that has run some of his better races at Oaklawn Park. And so it's finished second. It's finished second 3 times in 8 career races. And what I really like is they've finally gotten this horse back to doing what this horse does best, in my opinion, which is 6 furlongs. This horse is obviously also coming back from a long layoff, but this horse has demonstrated the ability to run well off of a long layoff before, and doing so at a longer distance as well. So I think coming back from a long layoff, it has a trainer in terms of William Martin, who is winning at an 18% rate on horses coming back from this type of a layoff. Again, Walter de la Cruz up on the mount. And I just think this is a horse that, again, the distance cut back the last 2 times out. You've seen this horse turn in 2 pretty strong performances, finish second in a very similar spot in March 24th. And so I think, finishing second by 3 lengths in a $30,000 claimer. So I think, again, it just makes a lot of sense. At 12-1, you're getting good value on a horse that has demonstrated the ability to run well at this level at Oaklawn Park. So I think when you factor all those things together, you look at 12-1 on the morning line. This is a horse I absolutely like underneath. Don't necessarily consider this horse a strong win contender, but this is a horse I would absolutely be including in your vertical exotics. Let's move on to race 3, which is a $10,000 starter allowance going 1.16 miles on the dirt. I'm always going to say that, no matter how many times I say, oh, they're all in the dirt. I'll still say on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up. And this one is a really intriguing race because you have horses coming in from a lot of different directions and a lot of different situations, some of which are coming in from different tracks, some of which are coming in from long layoffs. And I really, really struggled between the favorite, Leader of Men, which is 5-2, the Ron Moquette horse, jockeyed by Rafael Barriano, who were those two are just on fire. Moquette winning 50% of his entries, Behariano winning 28% of his mounts the first weekend at Oaklawn. But that horse just, I don't know. There's something about that horse. The works have not been overwhelming at Oaklawn. Also, the fact this horse hasn't been seen working in over 2 weeks makes me a little concerned how this horse's condition is going to be. This is a horse that had been working pretty, somewhat steadily um, in between regular trips. But like I said, hasn't been seen the last 2 weeks. So I'm a little bit interested in that. And like I said, I just wanted to maybe go in a different direction. So I went with the 5 flat out winner. This is again a Nevada Liffin horse, jockeyed by Angel Rodriguez. Like I said, I think the 4 is good, but the works at Oaklawn have been a different story. In terms of the 5, this is a horse that's maybe coming from a quote unquote lesser track, coming from Hawthorne, coming from Canterbury before that, but running really, really well there. Very excellent efforts the last 3 times out. This is going to be this horse's 3rd time back in the form cycle. I think this horse found the right level, has been running in these kind of $10,000 starter allowance races at Hawthorne. Going this distance of a mile and a 16th is not an issue. And so, like I said, the last 2 times out, both wins, one by 6 1/4 lengths, another by 2 3/4 lengths. So I think this is a horse that's trending in the right direction. 3-1. I wouldn't be surprised if this horse floats up a little bit, just because I would imagine the 4 is going to take a lot of money. So you might end up getting much better odds than 3-1 as it stands on the morning line. In terms of value, there's not a ton of huge long shots in this race that I love, but I do like the number 6 Fredonian. This is a horse that is a Carl Broberg horse that just seems to always be around the money. This is a horse that's really gotten to a good groove at Remington Park, and won 3 races there, finished second in 2 others, and finished 3rd most recently out. And so I just think this is like I said, a horse that's very consistent. 12, or I'm sorry, 14 for 20 in the money at this distance. That's a very reliable horse at this particular distance, especially when you take into consideration this horse's career record, which is not necessarily overwhelming. 8 wins in 47 starts, but 6 wins in 20 starts at this distance. So I think that's a big factor to take into consideration. Christian Torres, the jockey, had a heater last weekend, winning 7 of his 20 mounts, 35% win rate. Torres got on a roll last year at Oaklawn Park. When he gets on these heaters, he's a jockey you definitely want to be on the lookout for. So I think this is a horse that's been improving the last 3 times out in terms of speed figures, but also shows a lot of consistency, like Fredonian at 9-2, to provide a little bit of value in this race. So moving on to race 4, we have a $90,000 maiden special weight, a mile and a 16th for 3-year-olds and up. And this is the one where I really had a hard time getting past Moquette and Berriano. And at least this time you're getting a little bit of value on them. And you're just going to see some big names here in terms of Moquette and Asmussen, Behariano, and Santana Jr., but you're getting them at a little bit of a price. And so I really like that in this particular race. But we'll start with the favorite, or my top pick. It's not the favorite, but my top pick, which is Sinner's Sin. This is a horse that has shown ability at Oaklawn Park. And he's coming back from a long layoff, no doubt about it. Moquette's got, some success with horses like that. This horse returns as a gelding, and this horse ran 2 seconds and a third at maiden special weights at Oaklawn Park back last spring, and showed some nice progression, has some good speed figures there, has taken on money. Now you could say maybe he's a little bit of a money burner, maybe he's a hanger. Possible, but I'd still like to give this horse another chance, particularly coming back from the gelding. And also you're getting 9-2. There's some other horses in this race that are intriguing. Town Branch, the number 5, is the morning line favorite at 5-2, but that's a horse that, I just don't know. That horse kind of, it's again a little bit of an AB horse, kind of teases some ability and then regresses. So I'm not 100% sure that this is a horse that I want to kind of go get behind, especially at 5-2 in the morning line. I think at 9-2, you're looking at a horse that has demonstrated the ability to run well at this distance at Oaklawn Park. You're getting a fair price. And so I like Sinner's Sin at 9-2 up top. Now, my value play here is an Asmussen horse with Ricardo Santana Jr. aboard. This is a horse that's getting the blinkers putting on. This is a horse that first time out got off pretty slow, and Wasn't ever much of a factor after that. I love it when you put blinkers on a horse like this. It should be much more aggressive out of the gate. Again, Ricardo on the mount. So this horse is going to get out of the gate much faster. You probably won't get 10-1 on this horse, but I do think this is a horse that is one that I just think is going to fire much more effectively second time out. So that's something that you see Asmussen being very successful with. 21% winner second time out. Also, whenever you put the blinkers on, 20% winning move, 19% winning move first time you put the blinkers on. So a lot of things to suggest that this horse is going to get rolling and this horse is going to fire this time out, and especially if you're getting 10-1. Now, will you get that by post time? I don't know. I mean, Asmussen horses are going to get bet down at Oaklawn Park, but 10-1, I'll take that shot as a morning line value, and we'll see where we end up at post time. But that's where I went in race 4. Now, race 5, we have a $10,000 claimer that is also going a mile and a 16th for 3-year-olds and up. And this is one where I really struggled to get past the morning line favorite. And that's one where it's just, again, looking at the rest of the field, and none of the other horses were particularly logical and made a lot of sense. Wartime Hero, on the other hand, is a horse that admittedly is coming back from a long layoff. But it was, like I said, it's hard to find many other horses in this particular race that I think can really challenge him. But here's the thing. I think this horse might float up in value. So while on the screen right now, you see 9-5, I wouldn't be surprised if you get 5-2, 3-1 on this horse, just because this horse is coming back from a long layoff. But this horse makes a lot of sense. At Oaklawn Park, this horse has finished second twice, is 3 for 5 in the money at this distance with a victory, has run well coming off long layoffs before. That's, I think, a very, very critical point to make. This horse won off of a full year layoff before, went from August 2020 to August 2021 without racing, came back and won at a claiming level. Okay. Then took another break, confronted kind of a muddy surface, but then next time back out from that, ran very, very well, very consistent. So I think this horse, it makes sense, all of the races that this horse has run, especially the races at Oaklawn Park. You look at the December 18th race from 2021, muddy track. You can toss that out. Didn't like the seal track. It was also coming back from a long layoff. January 16th, runs second at a mile and a 16th, the distance we're running now. Then February 2nd, runs second again at a claiming 30,000. So these are kind of the horse's best 2 performances. Then goes up to an allowance level race at a mile and a half, does not run particularly well. Then again, kind of runs a mile and an 1/8 on April 2nd, or April 7th, I should say, doesn't run particularly well, but then drops back down to a claiming race in a mile and a 16th and runs a competitive 4th. But that's also the race that sends this horse to the bench. So I understand why this horse is, 9-5, but I think this horse might float up a little bit. I do think this is my top pick. Again, it's hard to find other horses in the spot to really get behind. Now, the horse that I do like from a value standpoint is the number 8 Arrival. This is a horse that is 12-1 on the morning line. This horse is just consistent. Again, 10 for 20 in the money at in the money, and 13 for 31 at this distance. So this is a horse that like I said, I think is, 10 for 20 at Oaklawn and 13 for 31 at this distance. I think there's something there here. Of course, I always love Calvin Burrell, who's the jockey here. This horse has good tactical speed, but this is also a horse that will have some left in the tank. It's not as if you see those U.S. time form pace early, late figures just drop off a cliff. He's got good speed early to be able to get position, but then he's got plenty of speed late to be able to hold that position and still finish strong. If you're looking at the racing forms, the key is to run back to maybe that race that he made on May 8th. That's a race at Oaklawn Park, $25,000 claimer, sat a little further back, and they made a really nice run. Calvin was aboard that day and finished 3rd. But that's the sort of trip I would expect out of Arrival in this spot. And so it's a horse that, like I said, I think is sitting on a pretty decent effort, and in a field that's not particularly overwhelming. I think 12-1 is more than a fair price. And I think this horse is absolutely going to outrun its odds. Well, let's go to race 6, which is a $100,000 optional claimer, 1 mile for 2-year-olds. They're about to be 3, but they're 2 for right now. And this is one where, listen, the race shape sets up so well for the favorite, it's almost scary because there is a ton of speed in this race, a ton of speed. The number one horse is going to go. The number two horse is going to go. The number five horse is going to go. The number six horse is going to go. The number seven horse is going to go. All right. Guess who's not going to go? The Brad Cox horse, Hit Show. Hit Show is going to sit back. And guess who has the best late speed figures in this entire field? That's right. Hit Show, the number 8, the Cox horse. It's hard to get past Brad Cox when he brings a horse like this to Oaklawn Park. This is a horse that is progeny by Candy Ride, and 2-1 in the morning line. Joe Talamo up on the mount. This is a horse that broke its maiden at Keeneland, then stepped up to $100,000 optional claimer last time out at Churchill Downs at a mile and a 16th, and just completely bobbled at the start and was 7 lengths back at first call. So it just had some issues. Florent Giroux was up on the mount that day, but the horse kept on. I mean, the horse didn't completely pack it in and give up, showed some ability, finished 4th. I think this time you're going to see a much better effort from Hit Show, who, by the way, is getting Lasix for the first time. Oh, is that a good idea? Yes, it is, because guess what? Brad Cox runners, 40% win rate first time on Lasix. So that's not a bad percentage if you're going to play that. And by the way, if you think that's, well, what sort of ROI are you getting? 236 ROI. So a very positive ROI there for Cox with first time Lasix. But that's where I'm going to go in this race, just because it sets up so well. It's not that this horse is the favorite. It's just the way that this race is structured. And so to that extent, my value play in the number 4 Record Point, same sort of thing. This horse is 8-1, just coming off breaking its maiden in a restricted maiden special weight at Churchill Downs on November 16th. But I really like what this horse has late in the race. This horse has some decent tactical speed to make sure he's not too far back early. But out of everybody else in the field, this horse absolutely has the second best late speed figures. And so I just think this is a horse that this pace is going to set up perfectly for Record Point to come running late and to grab a piece underneath. At 8-1, you're getting a nice value there. And again, I think sometimes too, once a horse wins, it can be a little bit infectious. It can start to, the horse starts to get a little bit more confidence in him. So I think winning last time out was a big deal. You like to see that continue to go on. And if you're looking at the forms, I would ignore that last work. The work on December 11th was a very unimpressive 5 furlong work, but that was on a muddy surface at Oaklawn with all the weather they've been having. You go back, you look at what this horse has worked out at previously, you see those minute flat 5 furlong works. You see some 47-3, 4 furlong works. This horse has speed and has stamina, getting Lasix for the first time as well. So definitely like Record Point there to finish underneath and provide some value to your tickets. Well, let's go to race 7. And this is one of the 2 stakes races on the card, the Poinsettia Stakes. And this is 5.5 furlongs for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares. And where am I going to go here? Well, I'm going to stay away from chalk in this particular race. I'm going to go with a little bit of a price, at least 5-1 on the morning line, to Ari Oakley, who is the Steve Asmussen horse, jockeyed by Isaac Castillo. This is a horse that has outstanding early speed. I typically don't like picking speed horses breaking from the rail, or I shouldn't say I don't like picking horses breaking from the rail in sprint races, except for when they have exceptional speed. They have natural exceptional speed. This horse should absolutely get out, has never had issues breaking before. And so I think this horse will be able to shoot out the gap and get to the lead pretty quickly. Second back from a little bit of a layoff. This horse has run against older females 3 times before. Guess what? All victories. Broke its maiden against older females, then won an allowance race, $125,000 allowance race against older females, went to the bench for about 4 months, came back, 5 months actually, came back and then beat older females again in an $80,000 optional claimer at Churchill last time out. So this is a horse that has no problem going in against olders. And guess what? It's a gun runner. And sometimes things are as simple as bet gun runners. And so, especially when they're trained by Steve Asmussen. So Ari Oakley's my pick up top at 5-1. I just think this horse is the speed of the speed. And in 5.5 furlongs, that's kind of what you're looking for, at least in my opinion, it is. Now, in terms of value, I really wanted to pick the 4 Red Hot Mess, but I think that might end up being a Red Hot Mess at 20-1. But I think that horse just has something in him, but or something in her, I should say. I just don't know if you're going to see it this time out. But ultimately, I went with Sarah Harper at 6-1, Ron Moquette, Berriano aboard on the mount. This is a horse that, again, just very consistent. The bad efforts you can absolutely chalk up to one center to the bench, the other is coming back from the bench. Outside of those 2 performances, this horse doesn't miss the board. And so this is a horse that I just feel is in a really good spot. 6-1, you're getting more of a fair price on a horse with connections that are absolutely on fire. Again, when Moquette and Berriano team up, they're winning at a 50% clip at Oaklawn. Guess what that ROI is? $8.35. Could I interest you in that, sir? So that's where I'm going in the Poinsettia Stakes, the Ari Oakley up top, and I do like Sarah Harper underneath. Well, let's go to race 8, which is a $104,000 allowance. And this race ushers in the return of Barber Road, who was, of course, on the, in the Kentucky Derby, ran the Belmont, finished second in the Arkansas Derby, third in the Rebel, was always a very honest horse in leading up onto the Derby trail, getting Lasix for the first time now, and coming off a long layoff. Last ran June 11th at the Belmont Stakes. And now coming back in this allowance race for, first level allowance at 1.16 miles. I don't love Barber Road in this spot. And so I'm going to be playing against Barber Road. A couple of reasons why. I just think Barber Road's running style of being this kind of late runner, coming off of a long layoff. I just don't love that combination of running style and coming off of a long layoff. There's a little bit of speed in this race, but there's not a ton of speed necessarily. So that's part of the reason why, especially at 4-5 on the morning line, I just can't get behind Barber Road at that price on the morning line. The works have looked nice, but they don't look like, John Ortiz, the trainer, doesn't look like he's got Barber Road cranked up. Also, Ricardo Santana Jr., a jockey who I like a lot, but again, a jockey who weaving through traffic is not necessarily what I associate with Ricardo Santana Jr. the most. I think of him more as someone who is better at getting horses to go. Breaking from the inside rail. Just a few reasons why I'm going against Barber Road in the spot. Where I ended up landing was U.S. Navy Cross, 6-1 on the morning line. This is a Carl Broberg horse, jockey by Orlando Mojica. And this is a horse that will like the distance, should have, like I said, some pace to run into. There's some long shots who are going to probably go out and set at least a decent clip early on. I think this horse provides good value, absolutely does close from the back, but has demonstrated the ability to close from the back no matter what the pace is up front. And I think that sort of versatility is important. This is kind of one of these rare horses that runs really effectively on both surfaces, has been running really well at both Remington Park and Lone Star on the turf, but also running really well on the dirt at Remington Park recently, having a win and a $36,000 allowance last time out. This is also second back from a layoff, so I also like that angle as well. And the other horse that I'm worried about in this race is Disc Jockey. Disc Jockey's never gone over a mile. The Diodoro horse. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I just don't know how Disc Jockey's going to take to 1.16 miles. So as a result, I ended up on U.S. Navy Cross. Now, in terms of value, I ended up going with Winterwood at 8-1. This is a horse that broke its maiden at this distance at Oaklawn Park. Again, I go back to that a lot. Horses that have had success at this track at this distance. And so that's something I like to come back to. Very similar running style to U.S. Navy Cross in terms of will be coming from the back a little bit, although it does have enough tactical speed that this horse can position themselves fourth, fifth early on, not necessarily be sitting all the way at the back of the pack, has the ability to make that middle move. I know Chase Sessions, the Wolf of Oaklawn, who I talk to a lot on Twitter and on his podcast, Notorious OTB. When I talk to him, he always talks about horses that can make that middle move at Oaklawn Park is so important. I think Winterwood's a horse that can do that. So I think it feels like this is a horse that can finish pretty effectively underneath. Like I said, has a win at this distance, has a win at Oaklawn Park, and is 5 for 8 lifetime in the money. Well, let's go to the third, or the second, I should say, of the 2 stakes races, the Tinsel Stakes. And where are we going to go in this particular race? Well, I'm going to, again, go to the inside rail when it comes to the stakes race. And I'm going to go with Last Samurai. This is a race that has some other names in it. Bal Harbor, the Diodoro horse, is in this particular race. And you have Hosier that's in this race. You have a few others. Run Classic as a horse that is attracting as the morning line favorite at 8-5. I just don't know if I trust One Run Classic in this big of a spot. I mean, this is a horse that finished second in $100,000 optional claiming last time out at a mile and a 16th, but I just don't know. And I'm willing to play against an 8-5 favorite that I have questions about in this particular spot. So I ended up on Last Samurai, who's a D. Wayne Lucas horse, jockeyed by Bariano. Now, this horse has not won since D. Wayne took over training, but this horse has absolutely been keeping better company. Last time out was the Grade 1 Clark against Proxy, Rich Strike, West Willpower, Folsom. Time out before was the Grade 2 Fayette, again against Folsom and West Willpower, finished third in that race. Before that was the Charlestown Classic against Art Collector and Mind Control, who we just saw win the Cigar Mile. This horse also ran on the Stephen F. Foster. So, against Olympiad and American Revolution. This horse has been keeping very, very good company. 9-1. You're getting a 9-2, I should say. You're getting good value on this horse. This horse has 2 wins over the surface at Oaklawn Park last spring. And so last winter and spring, I should say, has won at this distance. I just think Last Samurai makes a lot of sense here. Now, in terms of value, I ultimately went with the 6 Logical Myth. I absolutely love this horse. I think this horse is one of those that has the form muddied up, coming from a smaller track, having just run at Zia Park, but only run 3 times on the dirt, but has run well all 3 of those times, finished second, in fact, in all 3 of those. Once in the Zia Park Championship Stakes at a mile and an eighth, finished second. Another time of $40,000 optional claimer at the fairgrounds and ran second there. And then at Keeneland, actually, on a muddy track in a $25,000 claimer, ran second as well, had Sias aboard that day. So this is a horse that has attracted some good jockeys, has shown ability on the dirt, finished second last time out to Soy Tapatio, who may not be a huge name, but Soy Tapatio has been going around the country, if you've not been paying attention, just winning a bunch of like minor listed stakes races at secondary parks. I think a 10-1 Logical Myth makes a lot of sense. I like using this horse underneath for Sean Davis and Tyler Bays. So that's where I'm going to go in the Tinsel Stakes. Now let's close out with a couple of value plays. And so my up top pick in the 10th race, which is $104,000 allowance, 6 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up. And this is for fillies and mares, and it is a state restricted race for those Arkansas breds. We love those Arky breds. Where did I end up going here? I ended up going to the number 11 Choctaw Charlie. And so this was a race. This is a horse I really liked. And this horse just makes a lot of sense coming off a layoff, but the trainer is hitting at a 14% rate. And this is a horse that's just very good at this level and has beaten many of these horses before. This is a horse that does not need to lead and can sit off the pace, which is what he should be doing, or she should be doing, I should say. Should sit off the pace of the 9, the 2, and the 3. I think all 3 of those horses are going to go to the lead. This horse can kind of sit behind that 6-1 in the morning line. You're getting some nice value there. This is a horse that's actually run halfway decent coming off long layoffs before, going from this like April to December, just kind of sticking at Oaklawn. This is something you see at a lot of tracks. You see this at like Assiniboia Downs. You see this at Sam Houston. You see this at Lone Star. Horses that just run at that track, and when that track's not running, they just don't run. And so you'll see these horses that do have these 5, 6, 7 month gaps sometimes in their running lines, not because they're hurt, but just because that's just the only track that they run at. And so this is a horse that's had some nice works leading up to this, some nice sharp 4 furlong works and a nice little 5 furlong breeze out last time out. So I think this is a horse that just makes a lot of sense. Choctaw Charlie at 6-1. Now, in terms of the value, I went to the number 6 Mocha Kiss, which is a big price, 15-1. But this is a horse that just runs really well in these state restricted races. If you go through and look at this horse's form, when running in these Arky bred races, you see nothing but really strong in the money finishes. Last 5 times out, third, second. That's what you're looking for, quite frankly. This horse had, last ran in May, then came back, ran November 21st. So this is second off the layoff. Kylie Jordan, who won 2 races opening weekend at Oaklawn, gets the mount. I just think Mocha Kiss at 15-1, I'll gladly take that price. This is a horse that has demonstrated ability at Oaklawn Park, finishing 9 for 16 in the money, 4 for 10 in the money at this distance. So I like to close it out with an 11-6 exacta. I'll probably be playing that. And so that would be a nice little way to finish out your day. Well, that is it for today. We've ran through all 10 races on the card in just 35 minutes. So I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season. We're going to be back next week to do a special capping the card for the opening weekend at Santa Anita. Now, make sure to like this video. Make sure to comment below with what you think of the picks for this Saturday Oaklawn. Make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits on YouTube. Make sure to give me a follow at the handle at Failed to Menace. Well, listen, friends, until next time, my name is Matthew Desantis, wishing you all the best at the track and reminding you that it's now post time.